After 5 years of invisible work, I was suddenly fired, as they tried to steal my projects and reputation. But I was ready, quietly gathering proof to expose the betrayal and take back control. I changed the system so no one could stay in the shadows and steal credit without consequences. My name is Melanie, and that night, the sharp buzz of my phone yanked me out of a restless, feverish half-sleep. I didn't even glance at the clock. I could feel in my bones it was well past midnight. My skin was on fire. Every breath felt like dragging air through wet cloth, the flu having knocked me flat for days. Even so, I dragged my heavy arm over to the nightstand and grabbed the phone. The caller ID lit up. Tara DuPont. I didn't speak. Neither did she, just that slow, deliberate breathing of hers. Then came the words, cold and clipped. "You're fired. Your projects in your office are reassigned." No greeting, no hint of concern, just the verdict. I let the silence stretch before answering with a flat, "Okay." Another pause, this time on her end. "Wait, what do you mean, okay?" Her voice caught just barely. I gave a rough little laugh, my throat raw from coughing, unable to resist. "I mean," I rasped, steady despite the hoarseness, "you're late." That stopped her. The pause wasn't confusion now, it was fear. She didn't know. 2 nights earlier, I'd spotted something in the security log from my Polarex-issued laptop. An unauthorized attempt to break into my project vault at exactly 2:15 a.m. Whoever it was hadn't cracked my encryption. I hadn't told IT. I hadn't reported a thing. Instead, I quietly changed every password, every lock. I'd installed a new biometric scanner on my office door that only recognized me. My systems had hidden failsafes, digital water Mitchell buried so deep they'd outlive the building itself. She thought she was making her move, but the truth was the betrayal hadn't begun at 12:15 tonight. It had started days, maybe months ago. Tonight was just the punchline. "You think you're clever," she said, and I heard the first crack in her confidence. "I think," I murmured, "you should check what exactly you reassigned, and who actually owns it." Before she could recover, I hung up. The fever still burned through me, my muscles still throbbed, but for the first time in a long time my head felt clear. I set the phone down, stared up at the ceiling, and let the quiet settle. Tara believed she'd struck first. She had no idea I'd been waiting for this longer than she could imagine. 5 years to be exact. Back when I'd first walked into Polarex's headquarters, portfolio in hand, full of hope that skill and hard work would speak for themselves. The company was overhauling its coastal freight division, and I pitched a port routing algorithm that adapted to real-time weather, customs delays, and fuel efficiency. 5 months after they implemented it, operating costs had dropped by 13%. Tara called it revolutionary, which I quickly learned wasn't praise. It was a brand she planned to sell as her own. She'd bring me into client meetings, then introduce me as the data support. Once during a conference call, she misrepresented a key part of the system, and I corrected her in real time. She smiled like I'd amused her, but when the call ended, she shut her office door and told me, "You're not here to be right, Melanie. You're here to deliver what I present." It felt like a slap, one I never forgot. The worst moment came at the NaviSync Awards, the most prestigious recognition in our field. Our firm was shortlisted for my routing model. I wasn't expecting a standing ovation, but when Tara stood on stage holding the trophy and declared, "This solution is a reflection of my belief in radical efficiency," without so much as mentioning my name, not in her speech, not in the program, not even in the looping slideshow, I felt something in me split wide open. That night I kept my mouth shut, shook hands, sipped sparkling water alone in the corner while she soaked in the applause. That's when I understood. Tara wasn't just opportunistic, she was methodical. She'd built her career on people like me, people who stayed quiet, who valued the work more than the credit. And I'd been part of her machine. But from that night forward, I started building my own plan. People like to assume you stay in a bad situation because you're afraid to leave or you don't see the harm. But I saw it all, every slight, every theft of credit, every time my work became her stepping stone. I stayed because I couldn't afford to leave. 3 months after I joined Polarex, my mom, Claire Mitchell, was diagnosed with aggressive lymphoma. She was only 63, still painting on weekends and insisting her homemade soups could fix anything. But the treatment with real promise wasn't covered by basic insurance. Polarex's executive tier plan was, And as long as I stayed a high-value employee, I had access to it. That meant smiling when my name was misspelled in press releases, and swallowing my pride more times than I could count. That meant sitting through endless client dinners where Tara would deliver my pitch word for word, never once looking at me like I even existed. It meant biting my tongue as I watched a promotion slip pass me for the third time, handed to someone who played her politics better. Titles never mattered to me anyway. What mattered were Tuesday mornings at Scripple, sitting beside my mom in those sterile treatment rooms filled with quiet beeping and cautious hope. She'd squeeze my hand and say, "Don't let work eat you alive, Lodi, you're meant to build, not bend." She never knew just how much bending I was doing, how many insults I swallowed, how many wins I buried under someone else's name just to give her another month, another painting on the easel, another pot of soup simmering on the stove. But necessity stretched too far begins to rot. There's a point when survival starts to feel like surrender. And the day Tara told me to stay out of the spotlight during a major pitch, the same pitch I had written from start to finish, I felt something click. I walked out of that boardroom and started building my own quiet archive. At first, it was nothing more than a folder labeled redundancies on my private drive. Annotated drafts, backup exports, version logs. I told myself it was just in case a question came up about my role, or if a project went sideways and I needed to pinpoint where it had derailed. But deep down, I knew I was building an insurance policy. Tara had been cutting deeper, stripping compliance Langford from my documents, softening safety protocols under the excuse of streamlining. I'd flag risks in my reports, only to watch her delete them before final submission. She wanted speed and optics, not systems built to last. So I saved everything: emails where she wrote, "Cut this, it makes us sound hesitant." Memos where she said, "Let's not mention the risk models, it'll kill the pitch." Meeting recordings where I suggested safeguards and she cut me off with, "We're past that, we need confidence, not caveats." For every project she touched, I kept two versions. The shiny one she demanded, and the real one built for legality, stability, and actual human safety. She never noticed, or maybe she didn't care. Tara lived for the stage, not the scaffolding. What she never anticipated was that I'd hidden digital authorship tags deep inside the architecture. Encrypted metadata, invisible annotations, even unique error codes tied directly to my credentials. On paper, she owned the slide decks. But in the code, in the bones of the systems, my fingerprints were everywhere. If she ever launched without me, it would run just long enough to look like a win, before splitting at the exact seam she ignored. It wasn't revenge yet, it was a proof mechanism. A way to show what I'd done when someone inevitably tried to erase me. That moment came faster than I thought. The morning after her midnight firing call, while I was still hacking through the last of my fever, Tara did exactly what I'd predicted. She rolled out 3 of the flawed systems all at once, without review, without backups, without me. By noon, one was live at the Port of Long Beach, one of the largest cargo hubs on the West Coast. PolarX's internal Slack lit up. My credentials hadn't been revoked, so I sat there, watching in real time as operations and legal scrambled. A shipment marked non-hazardous had skipped containment and was headed toward a residential offloading site. A temperature-sensitive package sat baking at the wrong checkpoint. Customs agents were firing off warnings. It unfolded like a slow-motion collapse, not because I wanted the chaos, but because I'd fought to prevent it, and Tara had deleted every safeguard. 3 hours in, I sent a single message, not to her, not to legal, but to Glenn Hadley, the former PolarX CEO, now an advisor quietly pushed out 4 years ago after Tara engineered a hostile restructure. We'd only spoken twice before, but 2 weeks earlier I'd sent him a secure file labeled Verification Model CL Mitchell with a note. "This isn't sabotage. It's documentation." Now I just typed, "You might want to take a closer look at what went live today." 20 minutes, he replied. "Already have." An audit began within the hour, silent, thorough, and invisible to me. I didn't need updates. The architecture was already telling my story. Every flaw she insisted on, every safeguard she erased, was tied to her name. Every trace she thought she'd scrubbed was still blinking beneath the surface. 3 days later, an email landed in my inbox from Peter Langford, PolarX's board chair, short, formal, and sharp. We were suddenly summoned to an emergency virtual meeting the next morning at 9:30 a.m. PST. Attendance wasn't just asked for, it was ordered. I logged in early, feeling drained but steady, wrapped in a dark sweater with no makeup. Not because I wanted to make a statement, but simply because I didn't have the energy to do more. The faces staring back at me through the screen were familiar, yet most of these people barely noticed I existed when we crossed paths in the office. Today they couldn't look away. Tara showed up last, her hair pulled tight into a severe bun, her voice cold and sharp as she cut through the tension with a demanding, "Why am I even here? What's this all about?" Like I had somehow crashed their exclusive gathering. Peter, calm but firm, ignored her outburst and said simply, "Let's begin." For the next hour I witnessed a methodical dismantling of Tara's empire. A quiet, clinical execution that hit with the force of a hammer. Glenn Hadley kicked off the presentation, pulling up logs that traced a trail of system failures back to compliance tags she'd stripped out, the very ones that kept us legally safe. Then came the moment that felt like a personal blow. Side-by-side comparisons of my original system drafts alongside Tara's edits, her changes glaringly obvious and reckless. And just when I thought the room couldn't get any quieter, Rachel Ingersoll, a board member I never expected to hear from, cleared her throat and said, "This isn't Tara's first time taking credit for someone else's work." The room froze. I caught Rachel's eye. Years ago, Tara had orchestrated a campaign to push Rachel out of day-to-day operations, branding her as out of touch and obsolete. Now here Rachel was, sitting in the room with the final word. The power had shifted in ways I never imagined. What followed wasn't a fiery showdown but a chilling, calculated deconstruction. Peter detailed breach after breach, client complaints stacking up, risk exposure spiraling out of control. Tara tried desperately to defend herself, throwing out words like miscommunication, misunderstanding, even witch hunt. But no one stepped up to back her. "We'll need your resignation on my desk by the end of today," Peter said without hesitation. Tara slumped back, stunned, whispering, "You can't do this." Silence swallowed her words. Without another sound, she dropped off the call. Then all eyes turned to me. Peter adjusted his glasses and said with a surprising warmth, "Melanie, your system saved this company. Your integrity protected our clients. We want to offer you the position Morgan just left, Senior VP of System Strategy, effective immediately." I stared at the blinking cursor in the chat box, my fingers hovering but frozen. Peter's face was steady, respectful. No pretense, no empty corporate flattery. I believed him. Senior Vice President. A title that should have meant everything after all the sleepless nights rebuilding entire systems from my tiny apartment, while Tara rehearsed flashy keynote speeches and stole the spotlight. I remembered the conference where my name was barely a footnote, while she soaked up applause. The interns who'd worked side by side with me, invisible, while promotions kept circling the same few faces. And now I was being asked to sit in her office, where her title upheld her legacy. A cold knot formed in my stomach. I breathed out slowly and said, "I appreciate the offer truly, but I'm not interested in replacing Tara." The call went silent, the tension thick enough to cut. Peter blinked once. "Melanie, please hear me out." I took a deep breath and said, "I've been working on something new. Not just backups or fail-safes, but a whole new way to run a systems division." I outlined the framework I'd been quietly building for 5 months. A structure where every contributor's work was fully credited, where pay was tied to real impact and revenue, not hollow titles, where version control was transparent, projects were truly shared, and ethics reviews were baked in at every step. Rachel's voice cut in, calm but skeptical. "You're asking us to dismantle the entire chain of command." There was no anger in her tone, just cautious curiosity. "I'm asking you to pilot something better," I answered. "Because what we just tore down nearly took the whole company with it." Peter leaned back in his chair and said slowly, "You'd lead it, build it from the ground up. You'd bring back the people who left this industry because they were tired of being erased. Give me a team. Give me 5 months." He nodded, almost reluctantly. "Draft your proposal. We'll vote next week." When the call ended, I didn't feel the rush of power I'd expected. I felt something else. Clarity. For the first time in years, I realized I wasn't just repairing someone else's broken system. I was designing something of my own. The board's vote was close, 6-5, but they approved the pilot. No fancy title, no executive perks. Just a project number, an internal budget, and 5 months to prove trust could be built into the very architecture of the system. I moved fast, assembling a team in 3 weeks, Not polished LinkedIn stars, but those quietly burnt out, overlooked, or pushed aside. A systems analyst from Austin who'd had his workflow stolen by a VP. A UI architect from Portland who left after her ideas were labeled too political, and 5 others like them. We named our initiative Division Core. No hierarchy, no titles, no names left off deliverables. Our first client was NovaCore, a scrappy tech startup in Santa Clara working on sustainable battery infrastructure. Their budget was tight, timeline short, but they were willing to experiment. Instead of a single lead, every one of us owned our domain fully, owning each draft, every presentation, every review. Our contributions were visible to all, impossible to erase. But just as we hit our stride, a mysterious bug started creeping into NovaCore's test servers, one that none of us could trace. It wasn't a simple glitch. Someone was sabotaging the project from inside. Fingers started pointing, paranoia set in. The fragile trust we'd built was under attack. And when a shocking email surfaced, threatening to expose years of hidden corporate sabotage if we didn't back down, it became clear this fight was far bigger than any of us had imagined. No, we'll handle the credits later. No ghostwriting, just straight-up proof from the people who actually did the work. 7 weeks after that, we rolled out our first campaign, and it blew past every goal NovaCore had set. User engagement jumped by 42%. Media coverage tripled, and the best part? Their own board started questioning why they were shelling out so much more to their old agency for way less. Just a week after launch, I got the call. They were cutting ties with their main agency. The CMO told me, "We're shifting the entire portfolio over to Division Core." Then she hesitated, adding, "We also shared your model with 2 other firms. They're interested." I stayed silent, not shocked, but because I felt it deep down, the moment when a system finally works as it should. It didn't just deliver results. It rewarded honesty. Word spread fast, blog posts, case studies, a buzz mixing curiosity and doubt in agency circles. Then one morning my assistant came in, phone in hand, eyes wide. "You need to see this." On the screen was a press release. Monica Clark had launched her own firm, Align Plus, complete with sleek branding, soft gradients, and all the buzzwords like attribution first and radical transparency. It was too familiar. She'd copied Division Core's surface style, public credits, even some of our onboarding Langford. But underneath it was the same old broken framework. Junior staff vented anonymously online. Clients whispered about shifting scopes and unbilled hours. One former strategist emailed me saying, "She takes credit when it suits her. But when things fall apart, it's everyone else's fault." By month 5, Align Pro had already lost 3 founding clients. Leaked Slack screenshots revealed chaos, staff turnover spiked, and Marissa disappeared from LinkedIn. Then out of nowhere she texted me, "We need to talk." I almost deleted it, but curiosity, or maybe the need for closure, won. We met at a quiet cafe in La Jolla overlooking the water. I got there early, she showed up late. Marissa looked smaller. Not fragile, just worn around the edges, less sure of herself. She ordered chamomile tea, her hands trembling as she lifted the cup. "Your model works," she said bluntly. "Mine doesn't." I nodded. "I know." She didn't look away, staring into the steam. "I thought I could copy it, structure, wording, but it falls apart. People don't trust me. I need help." I was quiet for a moment, then said, "Tara, you don't need my help. You need to shut it down. Stop stealing. Start building something real." She said nothing at first, then finally, "That's not advice." "No," I replied. "It's the only honest thing you haven't heard." She got up slowly, left her tea untouched, and walked out without looking back. I stayed seated, watching the sea, feeling neither victorious nor bitter, just lighter. That evening I found a small envelope on my desk. No return address, just my name handwritten carefully. 1 year later, Division Core wasn't a pilot anymore. It had become the new standard at Polarex. Old ways didn't collapse overnight, but cracks appeared quietly until the whole system shifted. Departments rewrote workflows, attribution policies changed company-wide, and other firms followed suit. 5 companies from different industries reached out, not for our code but for our model. I found myself speaking more with boards than clients, building frameworks more than launching campaigns. But I didn't mind. We were changing not just how work was done but how people were recognized for doing it. One morning, after a calm breakfast and a walk by the Marissa, I came home to a padded envelope leaning against my door. No name, no postmark. Inside was a copy of Pacific Design Monthly, a regional magazine. Flipping through, I stopped at a 2-page spread for a new municipal community center. No flash, no jargon, just clean layout, intuitive flow, warm understated colors. The credited designer? Monica Clark. Taped to the back was a plain white note. You were right. I'm building, not taking. Thank you. No signature needed. I stood there for a moment, the paper light in my hand, then tucked it away in my desk drawer beneath old sketches, system blueprints, and Division Corps' manifesto, not as a trophy, but as proof that sometimes when you stop chasing credit and start guarding truth, change happens, not loud or fast but deep and lasting. Revenge never really drove me, but rewiring the whole system so no one had to be erased to succeed, that was worth everything. I closed the drawer and turned back to my whiteboard, already half filled with notes for what's next.